This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Shalom Aleichem, Bruchim Habam. So today we have a number of very important issues to discuss in the Sefer Iggeres HaGra. Lately, we've encountered a number of statements of the Gra that are hard to understand or hard to absorb and deal with in our current society and in contemporary society. First of all, one of the things the Gra said is, the main thing is not to speak about anybody's praise and not to disparage anyone. So that's difficult to understand. We understand you can't disparage anyone, but not to praise anyone. As we mentioned, it's a very big mitzvah to praise tzaddikim, to speak about how great Tamir Chachamim or Yirei Shamayim Balei Midos are. The next thing the Gra says is that for a woman, it's better to daven in the house because it's impossible to be spared from jealousy and to hear Dvarim B'Telim, and one is punished for hearing Dvarim B'Telim, and certainly Shabbos and Yom Tiv, where women gather and they speak, it's better not to daven at all. That is what the Gra says. Better not to daven than for a woman to daven in the shul. That's also hard to understand in today's contemporary society. And then the big whopper was, be very careful not to go to a cemetery ever, because in the cemetery you have the klipos, and certainly women should not go there, and all ills and sin come from visiting cemeteries. So all of these three things need a lot of analysis, and I remembered that actually Art Scroll came out with an edition of the Iggeres HaGra. So, I finally succumbed, and I went out this morning. Actually, I had a bit of a bug, so I didn't want to share it with anybody. So I called the store. I said, you have Iggeres HaGra. I paid, and I said, just drop it in my window. I swung by, and here it is, Iggeres HaGra. And the Iggeres HaGra's edition is by Rabbi Shai Groucher, or Groucher. By the way, he has a lot of different svarim of Reb Chaim Kanievsky. He's a ben bayis by Reb Chaim Kanievsky. By the way, his father is Dedi. You remember the singer Dedi? That's his father. Anyway, so he writes a number of interesting things in the introduction, and he addresses all of these 3 points. So number one, he writes in the introduction that there are 2 versions of the Iggeres HaGra. And he brings something that I was completely unaware of. Number one, their edition number 1 of the Iggeres HaGra is found at the end of Mesilas Yesharim. That I know. If you look at the end of any Mesilas Yesharim, you have the Iggeres HaGra. The other one is recorded by Rabbi Yosef Zundel of Salant, a student of the Gra. And there's a third version known as the Aram Tsova version. If I'm not mistaken, the Aram Tsova version is Rav Goldberg has this edition in the back of his Iggeres HaGra, the Aram Tsova edition. Now, what's the difference between the Mesilas Yesharim edition and the Aram Tsova and the Reb Zundel Salant edition? The main difference is Reb Zundel's edition is written in feminine and the Mesilas Yesharim is written in masculine. So the question is, so what did the Gra write it in? And what I was not aware of is the Gra did not write it in either. The Gra wrote it in Yiddish. And these are translations. Now, what I would like to know is who translated it. That's the $1 million question. I don't know the answer to that. But that may open up an entire new understanding of the Iggeres HaGra. But be it as it may, let's take one thing first. What about the fact the Gra says, don't speak about anybody's praise? So Reb Groucher brings over here the Gemara in Erechin that Rav Dimi taught that one should avoid speaking complimentary about their friend. It might lead to his detriment. Meaning, this person is very smart and very kind and very this and very that, but he's a little naive, right? You're bound to. So that's what the Gemara says. That's the Gemara in Erechin on Daf Tezayin. However, the Gemara in Erevin on Yud Chesam Beis says, Miktsas shvachai b'fanav. Praise a person partly in their presence, but v'kulai shalai b'fanav, not in their presence, say their whole praise. So that indicates that if a person's not around, you are allowed to praise them. So Rashi learns that when Rav Dimi says one should not praise somebody, Rashi says you should not praise someone excessively, because praising someone excessively is going to bring to their detriment. And basically, regarding this issue, this is how he explained it, and I remember seeing that in the Chafetz Chaim, that regarding praising someone, it's only excessively. However, if you look in the Gemara in Basra, Baba Basra, Daf Kuf Samach Daled Amid Beis, the Gemara says that Reb Shimon was once sitting in front of Rabbi, and Rabbi was reading a Tehillim, and Rabbi said, it's a very nice ksav, and Reb Shimon said, no, I didn't write it, Rabbi Huda Chayata wrote it. So Rabbi said to Reb Shimon, why are you speaking Lashon Hara? So the question is not speaking Lashon Hara, he's speaking Lashon Tov. He's saying that I didn't write this beautiful ksav, my friend wrote it. So the Gemara says that, I'm quoting Rav Dimi and Erechin, that you're not allowed to speak about someone's praise, and this l'chayra is not excessive. He's not praising him excessively. He's just saying it's a nice ksav. So the Magen Avram, and apparently the Chafetz Chaim learns this way, it says that praising someone is prohibited in front of an enemy. And the Gemara in Baba Basra that says that Reb Shimon was told by Rebbe, don't speak Lashon Hara, it's because it was made publicly and there were some of Rabbi Yehuda Chayata's enemies there. So the bottom line is, one cannot speak about someone's praise excessively, even in front of his friends, and one should not speak any words of praise in front of an enemy. That's the conclusion. In other words, if you know somebody doesn't like someone, do not praise that person in the enemy's presence. By the way, let me just tell you what that means. The Gemara says, Chazaka kol balum nasai sanei nasai. A plumber hates all plumbers. And an electrician hates electricians. And an accountant hates accountants. And the rabbi apparently extrapolate, but that's what the Gemara says. People don't like members of their own occupation. And therefore, to an accountant, don't praise another accountant. To a lawyer, you're not allowed to praise another lawyer. It's halacha. Now, if there are no enemies there, you're allowed to praise, but not excessively. However, Rav Groucher quotes so that's how we learned it, but I'm reading to you just to have a definitive sort of approach to this. Rav Groucher quotes the Tshuvas Chasam Sofer in Chelik Vav Siman Nun Tes, that we know there's an idea that while you're performing a mitzvah, shomer mitzvah lo yeda davara. One who performs a mitzvah will not know anything evil. But he says that if someone is, he says in the Gemara in Baba Basra where Rebbe was just praising the handwriting, so that's not necessarily a conversation of a mitzvah. So that's a problem because there might be an enemy there. However, to praise a tzaddik, to praise their good deeds, or chachma, since that's a mitzvah, we're not afraid it's going to lead to something bad. Again, but that's his chidush, that if you're praising someone to, so to speak, raise up the madrega of those who serve Hashem, that would be permitted. Okay. The next issue, graveyards. As many of you know that I do appreciate visiting Kivrei Tzadikim, and the question is, the Gra says, be careful not to go to a cemetery. So the first thing is, it depends which gersa you use. Because in Rav Goldberg's first gersa, he says, V'sishmar, you should be careful. He's talking to his boys. And then he says, certainly women. But in the gersa Rav Zundel of Salant and in Aram Tsoiva, it's V'sishmari, he's only talking to women. That women are not allowed to go to a cemetery. But there's no prohibition for a man to go to a cemetery. So let's discuss this a little bit. By the way, not only does the Gra seem to say one should avoid cemeteries, Reb Chaim Vital quotes the Arizal that one should always be careful to remain Daled Amos from a grave so that the forces of impurity do not stick to him. Now let's say over from the story from Alios Eliyahu, the Gra once went to a cemetery to visit his mother, and he went with his brother Reb Doiv Ber. So when they left, the Gra said, did you see? Mama was very happy that we came to her kever. Rav Dov Ber was surprised, that the Gra would be able to perceive his mother's presence at the kever. A few days later, the Gra told Rav Dov Ber that he was suffering from having visited his mother's kever. Rav Dov Ber said, "What do you mean? Didn't you say Mama was happy?" The Gra said she was happy, but it caused me much hardship. So here's the bottom line. The language of the Gra implies all women should avoid a cemetery. Why? Apparently, because women don't have the protection of Talmud Torah. Now, if you're going to go with the other girsa of the Gra, that a woman's Talmud Torah is tznius, then maybe that would offer her protection. However, the Pischei Tshuva, the Chaye Adam, and the Mishnah Berurah say that a woman should not go to a cemetery if she is a nida and she is tameh, only after they go to the mikvah. I will tell you, the Chaye Adam says a man should not go to the cemetery until they go to the mikvah. Reb Shmuel Kamenetsky says that's not the custom, but there is an inyan not to go when it's tameh. The bottom line is, Rav Moshe Sternbach has a tshuva and Shuvas Hanhagos, and he says the Gra is only talking about to kvarim in Chutz La'aretz. Kivrei tzadikim are not, the kvarim in Eretz Yisrael don't have tumah. So the first thing is you're allowed to go to kvarim in Eretz Yisrael. Number two, the Gra was not talking about kivrei tzadikim. Kivrei tzadikim are like kivrei Eretz Yisrael, and your tefillos are more accepted. And therefore the Gra was not talking about Kivrei Tzadikim, and he was not talking about Kivrei Eretz Yisrael. So common practice is that people do visit graves of Tzadikim, especially if they're a relative or a parent, and they are accepted more favorably. But don't think that by going to a kever you're fulfilling the words of the Gra and the Arizal. They are not necessarily big fans of it. But it's interesting, I saw in the introduction of the Sefer that Rav Groucher says he once saw Rav Aaron Leib Steinman. Rav Aaron Leib said, "I haven't seen you lately. Where have you been?" And he said, "I just traveled to Europe to visit the kever of the Gra." And Rav Aaron Leib said, "Really? I didn't know young people have the sense to visit the kever of the Gra." Which, by the way, I would like to go to as soon as the world opens up. Okay, next. What about women going to Shul? Because the Gra says that to go to Shul and to hear the latest about whether the vice president will accept Trump's nomination or whether the Senate will remain Republican, Democrat, so then it's better not to daven. If that's what you're going to pick up in Shul, it's better not to daven. But the Gra is not talking about men. Men are mechuyev to go to Shul because of tefillah b'tzibur. Women do not have a mitzvah. Josh wants to come with me. Good, you're in. But the Gra says the men have a chiyuv to go to Shul, and therefore this does not apply to men. And he brings a story over here that one time, the Gra in one part of his life, he was wandering, as we had in the Talmud Devar, the concept of Prava Galus. And one time it was Yudal Adar, and he found himself in Prussia, and he could not get a minyan. So he comes to a small city and he starts paying people to make his minyan. The mistake was that the Gra paid everyone up front, and by the time he got up to Achashverosh, everybody was gone. And the Gra, whenever he would think about this story, he would break out into tears that he lost the merit of davening with a minyan. By the way, Reb Shlomo Shimshon Karelitz in Amudei Sheish writes that in the Gra's Shul, not only did women not come, there was no women's section in the Gra Shul. The Gra Shul did not have a women's section. Says Rav Moshe Sternbach, Rav Dessler in Kelm, women did not go to Shul. And the reason is, Rav Dessler said, because the righteous women found that when they went to Shul, it was hard for themselves to stay away from the Balei Lashon Hara, and therefore in Europe, in many communities, women did not go to Shul. Aber, says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, this whole admonition of women going to Shul is back in the day, that if you follow the Gra's advice and women don't leave the house, then women shouldn't go to Shul. But I'm told that there are communities in America that women do leave the house. That's what they tell me. So in modern society, where women have jobs, and women have go to work, and women go shopping, then whatever Lashon Hara and whatever stuff they're going to hear, they hear anyway. So, says Reb Chaim Kanievsky, in his opinion, there's no reason for a woman not to go to shul. I will say, I think, and I'm not quoting a source, I believe Reb Chaim Kanievsky's wife not only went to shul, but davened with the minyan 3 times a day. If I'm not mistaken, Reb Chaim Kanievsky's Rebbetzin would go to shul. But again, if in your shul women are talking to you by the davening, then best to follow the advice of the Gra and find somewhere else. Okay, Rabbi said that would be today's, but so hopefully that gives us some clarity about what it means one should not praise someone, what the restrictions of going to a graveyard are, and in terms of women going to shul. Tomorrow we're back on with Shimru at 2:30, the next Malacha. Tonight the shir is 8:30. And Sunday night there's going to be a Chazak event about Tu B'Shvat. And the good thing is there happens to be an English sefer that discusses Tu B'Shvat. So Sunday night is a Chazak event. And hope to see everybody soon. Kol Tov, Bracha V'Atzlacha.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.